The
For
sea
years,
turns against us.
fishermen
Look,
in the
the
Black
sky
Sea
is copper.
whispered the same story.
We must
That
get to
when the
safety.
water
Run,
turned
quickly!
unusually still, you
The
could
sea
hear
is
something
rising.
beneath it.
Run!
Not waves,
It's the
not
end!
currents,
To the
but the
hills,
echo
quickly!
of streets, like a drowned world trying to breathe again. No one believed them until scientists discovered something they couldn't explain. Perfectly preserved buildings, tools untouched by time, and signs of a civilization that disappeared long before history began writing anything down. The question isn't how it vanished. The real question is, why was this place erased so completely that even legends forgot it existed? They say the Black Sea keeps its secrets better than any grave on land. Maybe it's the way the water barely moves at dawn, or the strange silence that hangs over it when the wind drops. But the people who have lived along these shores for generations, they've always known something was wrong here. They felt it long before scientists arrived with their machines. A sort of haunting, a heaviness, like the sea itself remembers something it cannot forgive. It started with simple stories. A fisherman hearing the muffled sound of knocking beneath his boat. Another swearing he heard what felt like echoes, brief, distant, like footsteps on stone far below the waves. No one wanted to admit it publicly, not in the modern world. Who wants to be the old man on the dock telling tales about ghosts under the water? But privately, everyone had heard something. And then one morning the sea changed. The currents stopped. Winds that had blown the same way for years suddenly retreated. Birds that usually hovered over the water didn't come. It was as if everything, air, ocean, nature, paused in the same breath. People along the coast said the water turned darker that day. Not black, but something deeper, something unnatural, like ink swirling beneath the surface. A research team arrived, expecting nothing more than another routine survey. They lowered their scanning equipment, and at first, the screen showed only static. Then, shapes began to appear, straight lines, corners, perfect right angles. Not rock, not coral, not nature, architecture, streets. Foundations of buildings so well preserved that one scientist said it felt like the seabed had forgotten to age. They thought it was impossible. Nothing stays preserved at the bottom of the sea. Currents, oxygen, bacteria, everything destroys whatever falls into the deep. But the Black Sea is different. Beneath the surface lies a silent, oxygen-free world where time simply stops. A place where the dead do not decay. A place where history sleeps without rotting. So they sent down cameras, not expecting anything dramatic, just hoping to confirm the scans. But the moment the footage came back, the room fell completely silent. Perfectly preserved wooden beams, stone structures with carvings still visible, walls of homes standing upright, doorways leading to spaces where people once lived their daily lives. The remains of a city frozen in time, untouched for thousands of years. Even pottery sat exactly where someone had placed it, like the owner might walk back in at any moment. Nothing had collapsed, nothing had scattered. It was too perfect, too intact, too recent, as if the city didn't sink slowly, but vanished violently, all at once. And then came the detail that unsettled everyone in the room. Signs of burn marks on some structures, charcoal black streaks preserved by the oxygenless water. Something burned here, underwater, which makes no sense, unless it burned before it went under. But the deeper the cameras went, the stranger it became. The instruments detected unusual pockets of trapped gases, the kind that form when something rapidly collapses or implodes. The seabed showed cracks running for hundreds of meters. Something had ripped through this place, hard, fast, without warning. The scientists shared the footage with historians. And that's when everything grew even more confusing, because the style of the buildings, the carvings, the layout, didn't match any known civilization in that region from the accepted timeline. It was older, and not by a few centuries, but by thousands of years. Older than the pyramids, older than Mesopotamia, but too advanced for the era it should belong to. Like a chapter of human history had been ripped out, erased, and tossed into the sea. When the team returned for a second dive, something happened that none of them could explain. As the submersible approached one of the structures, a tall, curved wall with strange, repeating patterns carved into it. The cameras picked up a sound. A low, dull vibration. Not mechanical, not geological, almost rhythmic, like a pulse, a beat, as if something deep within the ruins was reacting to their presence. They dismissed it as an equipment glitch. But then it happened again, and the resonance grew stronger the closer they got. One diver later said the sound felt alive, like the seabed itself was remembering something, or warning them. When they tried to take a soil sample from around one of the structures, their tools malfunctioned. The robotic arm jammed, then shut down completely. When they restarted it, everything worked perfectly again until they approached the ruins. Then the system froze once more. It was as if something didn't want them touching the city. They brought up fragments of pottery, stone, and burnt wood, but none of it matched known civilizations. None of it made chronological sense. It was human, yes, but from a culture that shouldn't exist. And when the team prepared to go back down for a third dive, the weather changed. The calm sea erupted into sudden violence. Waves rising from nowhere, winds twisting so fast the ship had to pull anchors immediately. A storm that appeared in minutes and vanished just as quickly. Locals weren't surprised. They say the Black Sea doesn't like being disturbed, that every time someone goes looking too deep, the water finds a way to push them back. But the last piece of information, the one that truly shook everyone, came from an older fisherman who had never left his village. He looked at the footage, the carvings, the layout of the city, and without hesitation, he said he had seen these shapes before. Not in books, not in museums, but in a story passed down by his great-grandfather about a city that drowned in a single night, swallowed by a rising wall of water so massive it drowned the screams before anyone could run. A city no one was allowed to name. A city the sea wanted to forget. But now, the sea is giving up the truth. And the truth is darker than anyone imagined. For days after the first expedition, the research team barely spoke. They weren't allowed to share details publicly, but in private, every conversation circled back to the same feeling. What they had seen wasn't simply an ancient city. It felt like a message, a warning written into the seabed itself. Something intentional, something preserved not by coincidence, but by design. The lead archaeologist, Dr. Rains, couldn't sleep. He said he kept seeing the carvings from the curved wall, the strange repeating patterns, the symbols that didn't belong to any known language. They reminded him of something, but he couldn't place it. Not until he pulled out the old notes from his earliest days as a student, studying pre-flood myths from Sumerian tablets. The drawings were faint, broken, symbolic, but the spiral patterns, the intersecting lines, the curves, they matched. A forgotten symbol for a city swallowed by the sea. A city that vanished before the sun rose. A city so old the ancients said it was ancient even in their time. If those myths were true, then the ruins on the Black Sea floor weren't just old, they were prehistoric. They belonged to a civilization that vanished long before recorded history even began. And yet, the pottery fragments, the beams, the layout, they were far too advanced. Structures aligned with astronomical precision. Drainage networks, reinforced walls, designs no one expected from a world 5,000, maybe 7,000 years old. Something didn't add up. So the team returned to the site. But this time, something was different. The water felt heavier, the descent took longer, and the deeper they went, the darker it became, not just in light, but in atmosphere. A gravitational hush, as though the ocean itself was listening. The submersible lights flickered when they reached the ruins. Not a malfunction, a reaction. The same dull vibration returned. A low hum rising through the water, faint but unmistakable, like the distant sound of a massive drum beating once every few seconds. The kind of sound that makes your bones tighten because some ancient part of your brain recognizes danger long before your mind does. They approached the tall, curved wall again. But this time, something new was visible. Fresh cracks, lines that hadn't been there before, as if the structure had shifted, as if something underneath was moving. The team sent in the probe. The camera turned, and that's when they saw it. Not a building, not a wall, a barrier. Behind it lay a corridor, perfectly preserved, leading into darkness. A human-made passageway, carved stone, smooth edges, and symbols etched across the entire length like a story carved into the backbone of the earth. The archaeologist whispered, "This wasn't a city, it was a fortress." And for the first time, they realized why everything was so preserved, so intact, so deliberately protected. This wasn't the remains of a civilization that drowned. This was a place that someone or something tried to seal off. The team decided to push further. They maneuvered the probe through a narrow gap in the wall, slipping into the corridor. Dust, silt, fragments floated past the camera like snow. The deeper it went, the clearer the carvings became. Scenes of people running, waves rising like mountains, buildings collapsing, stars falling from the sky, and a final symbol, a circle split by a jagged line, representing not death, but separation, a sundering, a world ending, and beneath it a hand pushing downward, holding something beneath the waves. Not nature, not a natural disaster, something done with intent. Someone sealed this city, and everything in it. The probe reached the end of the corridor and stopped abruptly. The floor dropped off into a spiral shaft, descending into total blackness. A vertical tunnel, impossible to explore without a diver. But divers weren't an option. The pressure was too high, the location too unstable, or so they thought, because that night, one member of the team, a diver named Hale, went down alone without permission. His camera footage was recovered, but he never came back. The recording starts clear. He descends slowly, breathing steady. He reaches the curved wall, then the corridor. He moves through it carefully, touching nothing. But the deeper he goes, the more his breathing changes. Faster, uneven, almost anxious. He reaches the spiral shaft. He turns the camera downward and whispers, "There's something moving." The footage jumps. A vibration shakes the lens. The water below ripples, as if something enormous exhaled. Hale whispers again, but the microphone only catches pieces. Not a structure. It's deeper, something below. Then the low hum returns, louder this time, stronger, the kind of frequency that makes your vision blur. Hale's breathing becomes panicked. The shaft glows faintly, just for a moment, like something far below released a pulse of energy, a breath of light swallowed by the dark. The video ends with a final line, barely audible. It wasn't a city that drowned. It was a door. The audio cuts, the camera sinks, and Hale is gone. When the team analyzed the footage frame by frame, they found something no one can explain even today. One single image, only 0.3 seconds long, of a shadow rising from the deep. Not a creature, not human, not definable. A shape that didn't move like anything alive, yet wasn't still like anything dead. The government classified everything within hours. And the fishermen? They weren't surprised. They said something simple. "You opened what our ancestors begged the sea to bury." But here is the part that haunts everyone who has seen the footage. The ruins weren't still. They were shifting, settling, moving, as if the seabed wasn't a grave, but a lid, and whatever it's holding down is starting to wake. For weeks after Hale's disappearance, the research vessel stayed anchored above the site. Not because they wanted to continue, but because no one knew how to leave. Everyone on board felt the same thing, even if they refused to admit it out loud. If they left now, they'd be abandoning something that was no longer just an archaeological discovery. This had become a responsibility, a burden they had inherited the moment they uncovered that first stone beneath the silt. The ocean around them changed. The currents shifted unpredictably. The seagulls that once circled the deck vanished entirely. Dolphins that usually followed research vessels kept their distance. It was as though the entire marine world sensed what lay below and wanted nothing to do with it. Dr. Rains stopped sleeping. The low-frequency hum that appeared in the recordings began echoing inside his head during the day. Not as a sound, but as a pressure, a pulse inside his skull. He described it as someone knocking from deep below, asking to be heard. One night, while reviewing Hale's final dive, Rains noticed something no one else had seen. A detail hidden in the shadows of the corridor carvings. Beneath the chaotic scenes of the flood, the collapsing buildings, the rising waves, there was another etching almost completely eroded by time. He enhanced the footage frame by frame until the image clarified. It was a circle. Inside it, not people, not symbols, but a map. A map that matched the very coastline they were floating above. Meaning the people who carved this wall predicted the exact place the disaster would occur, or perhaps where they placed the lock. Rains realized then that they were not exploring a city swallowed by the sea. They were standing on top of the exact location someone once tried to hide forever. But the sea doesn't keep secrets forever. On the fourth week, just before dawn, the sonar alarms triggered. The vessel shook violently, but not from a storm, not from a current. Something deep below shifted upward, lifting the water column by nearly half a meter. Every instrument screamed. The crew rushed to the deck as the ocean surface bulged, as though something was pushing from beneath. Then it stopped, perfectly still, as if the ocean itself was holding its breath. The scientists lowered a new probe, experimental high pressure, with a thermal scanner. As it descended, the water temperature rose, then dropped, then rose again. No natural pattern behaved like this. At the site, silt clouds burst upward from the spiral shaft, spiraling like smoke from a chimney. The carvings on the walls flickered under the probe's lights, not glowing, but reflecting something deeper below, like a metallic sheen rising in intervals. The probe reached the shaft's edge and deployed lights downward. For the first time, the team saw the bottom. But it wasn't a bottom. It was machinery, ancient machinery. Massive stone rings interlocked together, layered like a device built to rotate, but crafted with a precision no ancient civilization should have possessed. And wedged between the rings, something organic, something alive once, something preserved unnaturally well by the cold dark. Thick, fibrous structures like roots or tendons stretched across the stone. The shaft wasn't a tunnel, it was a seal, and for the first time it was loosening. A groan echoed through the water. Not a sound, but a vibration that rippled up the probe's line, through the vessel's metal, straight into the crew's bones. The same low hum Hale had recorded now thundered through the ship like a heartbeat amplified 1,000 times. And then the probe captured it the moment the seal shifted. One ring rotated an inch, just an inch, but enough for water to surge downward into whatever void lay beneath. That's when the lights went out. The vessel shook. The screens blinked. The generator choked. Every electrical system failed for exactly 9 seconds, then restarted as if nothing happened. But that 9 seconds changed everything. Because when the feed returned, the probe wasn't alone anymore. A shape emerged from the shaft. Slowly, smoothly, not swimming, rising, carried upward by the rushing water like a shadow freed from its prison. It had no form the human eye could define. No edges, no limbs, no face. Just a mass of darkness that drank in the light, distorting the water around it. A void, a moving. Everyone on board the ship froze. For 43 seconds, the shape hovered there, suspended in the water, facing the probe or maybe sensing it. And even though it had no eyes, it felt like it was staring back. Then, without warning, it retreated. Not down, not up, sideways, into the rock, as if the stone itself were nothing but a curtain it could slide through. The probe went dead. The line snapped. The sonar monitors filled with static. And for the first time since the expedition began, the team made a unanimous decision. They left, not slowly, not carefully. They fled, because whatever they had awakened was gone. Not trapped beneath the ruins, not contained in the shaft, not sealed behind ancient rings. It was free, and no one knows where it went. But the older fishermen do. They point to the coastline and say, "It returns to where it started. Every tsunami, every unexplained disappearance, every strange underwater hum." They say it isn't the ocean being angry, it's the ocean remembering. And tonight, right now, somewhere in the depths, that hum is rising again. Because the door they uncovered wasn't meant for humans to open. It was meant to stay shut, forever. As we leave the shores of the Black Sea tonight, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Some stories are not lost to time, they are buried on purpose. The city beneath the waves was not just a settlement, not just an ancient community swallowed by water. It was a chapter of human history that nature tried to erase, but the earth itself refused to forget. Those walls, those streets, those broken columns, they are the last breath of a people who watched their world drown and still tried to carve their names into the future. Every stone under that silent sea is a reminder of how fragile our civilizations are, how entire worlds can vanish without a scream, and how easily we can become ghosts in someone else's history. But tonight, you brought that forgotten city back to life. You gave voice to the people whose stories were locked in darkness for thousands of years. And as long as someone remembers, as long as someone wonders, that lost city will never truly be lost again. Thank you for walking into the deep with me. If you want the next chapter,